The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, dotted with distant stars and swirling nebulae. Among the silence, a single ship drifted, the Dauntless, flagship of Squadron 42. Inside its steel corridors, the crew moved with purpose, their faces set in grim determination. War was coming. Captain Ray stood on the command deck, his sharp eyes scanning the holographic star map. Reports had come in, an enemy fleet, the ruthless Void Marauders, was closing in on the Omega outpost. If they took it, countless lives would be lost. All hands, battle stations, Ray ordered, his voice steady. The crew snapped into action. Pilots rushed to their fighters, engineers checked the shields, and gunners loaded the cannons. Among them was Lieutenant Mia, one of the best fighter pilots in the squadron. She strapped into her starfighter, Stormchaser, and powered up the engines. Ready to give them hell, she muttered, gripping the controls. The comms crackled. Enemy ships detected, 5 minutes to intercept. Ray clenched his fists. This was it. The battle that would decide the fate of the outpost, and perhaps the entire sector. Squadron 42, he said, addressing his crew. Today, we fight not just for victory, but for survival. Let's show them what we're made of. The Dauntless surged forward, its engines blazing. Behind it, the fighters of Squadron 42 followed, a deadly swarm against the darkness. The Void Marauders appeared on the scanners, a massive armada of jagged, black warships. Their leader, a merciless warlord, grinned as he saw the outnumbered human fleet. Destroy them all, he commanded. The two forces hurtled toward each other. In seconds, the silent void would erupt in fire and fury. And Squadron 42 would not back down. Space erupted in chaos as the two fleets collided. Laser fire streaked across the void, illuminating the darkness in bursts of red and blue. The Dauntless shuddered under the first barrage, its shields flaring as they absorbed the impact. Captain Ray gripped the armrests of his command chair. Return fire. Full broadside. The Dauntless cannons roared, sending a volley of plasma rounds tearing into the nearest Marauder cruiser. The enemy ship's hull splintered, venting flames into the vacuum. A cheer went up on the bridge, but the battle had only just begun. Lieutenant Mia banked hard to the left, dodging a swarm of enemy fighters. Her targeting system locked onto one, and she squeezed the trigger. Twin plasma bolts lanced out, piercing the Marauder's cockpit. The ship exploded in a silent burst of fire. Scratch one, she said, already searching for her next target. Around her, the dogfight raged. Squadron 42's fighters weaved through the enemy, outnumbered but not outmatched. Yet for every Marauder ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Command, we're getting swarmed out here, another pilot shouted over the comms. Ray's voice crackled back. Hold the line. Reinforcements are en route. On the Dauntless engineering deck, Chief Engineer Tom worked furiously. A direct hit had damaged the starboard thrusters, and the ship was losing maneuverability. Sparks flew as his team welded ruptured conduits. We need 5 more minutes. Tom barked into his headset. We don't have 5 minutes. Ray shot back. Get us moving, now. Tom wiped sweat from his brow and rerouted power from non-essential systems. The engines groaned, then surged back to life. The Dauntless lurched forward, narrowly avoiding a torpedo salvo. Mia's sensors blared, a Marauder battleship was powering up its main weapon. A planet-killer cannon. Captain. That big one's about to fire on the outpost, she warned. Ray's blood ran cold. If that shot landed, Omega outpost would be vaporized. All fighters, focus fire on that battleship's weapon array, he ordered. Buy us time. Mia didn't hesitate. She pushed her throttle to the limit, diving straight into the storm of enemy fire. The rest of Squadron 42 followed, their lasers blazing as they struck at the battleship's weak points. The cannon's glow intensified, it was almost ready. Then, a miracle. A fresh wave of Allied ships burst out of warp, reinforcements had arrived. The tide was turning. But the Marauders weren't done yet. The arrival of reinforcements sent a surge of hope through Squadron 42. Fresh fighters from the Resolute and Ironclad joined the fray, tipping the numbers in their favor. The Void Marauders battleship hesitated, its planet-killer cannon flickering as it diverted power to shields. Captain Ray allowed himself a grim smile. Push forward. Take out their command ship. Lieutenant Mia led the charge, her storm chaser weaving through debris and enemy fire. She locked onto the battleship's exposed weapon array and unleashed a full barrage. The cannon housing cracked, spewing molten metal into space. But just as victory seemed within reach, a deafening alarm blared across all frequencies. New contacts. Multiple signatures. Behind us, the sensor officer shouted. Ray whirled to the main display. Dozens of Marauder ships, previously hidden in the asteroid belt, now surged toward them. It was an ambush. The Void Marauder warlord's laughter echoed over an open channel. Did you truly believe we would face you with only half our strength? Foolish humans. The Dauntless shuddered as torpedoes slammed into its rear shields. Power flickered across the bridge. Mia cursed as enemy fighters swarmed from the new flank. They've got us surrounded. Stay sharp. Ray barked. All ships, defensive formation Delta. Protect the Dauntless. The Allied fighters tightened their ranks, forming a protective sphere around the crippled flagship. But the Marauders pressed harder, their attacks relentless. In engineering, Chief Tom fought to stabilize the failing systems. We're losing power to the port thrusters. If we don't. An explosion rocked the deck, throwing him against the wall. Smoke filled the corridor. The Dauntless was dying. Mia's heart pounded as she watched the Dauntless shields drop to 20%. They couldn't hold much longer. Then, a desperate idea struck her. Captain, she called, their reinforcements came from the asteroid belt. That means their main fleet must be spread thin elsewhere. If we punch through their left flank, we might reach their command carrier. Ray's jaw tightened. It was a gamble, but they had no choice. Do it. All fighters, follow Lieutenant Mia's lead. Full assault on their left flank. With a battle cry, Squadron 42 broke formation and dove into the enemy lines. Lasers flashed, ships exploded, and the Void Marauders scrambled to react. For the first time, the warlord's voice carried a hint of panic. Stop them. Mia's targeting system locked onto the command carrier's bridge. She fired. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Mia's plasma bolt streaked through the vacuum, trailing blue fire as they raced toward the Marauder command carrier. For one agonizing second, time seemed to freeze, then impact. The carrier's bridge erupted in a silent explosion, flames billowing from the shattered viewports. A ragged cheer burst over the comms. Direct hit. Their command ship is. The celebration died as the warlord's voice crackled through once more, colder than before. Did you think it would be that easy? The damaged carrier's outer hull plates detached, revealing a second, untouched bridge beneath. The warlord's face appeared on every screen, his scarred lips twisting in a sneer. You insects never learn. The Dauntless sensor officer paled. Their fleet, they're not retreating. They're regrouping. Indeed, instead of collapsing into chaos, the Marauder ships fell into a tighter formation, their movements suddenly precise, coordinated. The trap had been deeper than anyone imagined. Captain Ray's knuckles whitened on the armrests. Evasive maneuvers. All fighters, fall back to. A massive impact rocked the Dauntless, cutting him off. The main lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency glow panels. Alarms wailed as damage reports flooded in. Engineering Chief Tom's voice was strained over the intercom. "Captain, we've lost primary thrusters and life support on decks 3 through 7. We're dead in the water." Ray swallowed hard. Without engines, they were a sitting duck. Without life support, his crew had minutes before suffocation. Mia's fighter spun past the Dauntless' crippled form, her stomach churning at the sight. The once proud flagship now listed awkwardly, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. Around her, the remaining Squadron 42 fighters were being systematically picked off by the reorganizing Marauders. Then she saw it. "Captain," she transmitted urgently, "their command carriers moving into position directly ahead of us. I think they're preparing to board." Ray's blood ran cold. The Marauders didn't take prisoners, unless they wanted something. And there was only one thing on the Dauntless worth capturing intact. The Omega Core. The experimental warp drive prototype that could make their planet-killer cannon capable of striking anywhere in the galaxy. In the Dauntless' vault-like engineering bay, the Omega Core hummed softly behind its reinforced plating. Chief Tom wiped grease from his forehead as he manually sealed the blast doors. "They'll have to cut through 3 meters of neutronium alloy to reach it," he muttered to the small team with him. "That should buy us." The entire ship shuddered violently. A new alarm blared, the unmistakable sound of hull breach. Tom exchanged grim looks with his crew. They all knew what that meant. Marauder boarding pods. Mia watched in horror as dozens of spiked pods attached to the Dauntless like parasites, their plasma cutters already flaring to life. She wheeled her fighter around. "I'm going in," she declared. Ray's response was immediate. "Negative, Lieutenant. There's too many." "Then it's a good thing I'm not asking permission," Mia shot back, already angling for the main hangar bay. "Someone has to buy you time to scuttle that core." The channel fell silent for a long moment before Ray's resigned sigh came through. "Godspeed, Lieutenant. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As Mia's fighter disappeared into the Dauntless' wounded hull, the Warlord's command carrier began deploying its final, most terrifying weapon. From its belly emerged a sleek, black-hulled ship unlike any other, a personal executioner's craft. The Warlord himself was coming to claim his prize. The Dauntless groaned under the assault of boarding pods, their plasma cutters burning through armor plating like hot knives. Lieutenant Mia set her fighter down in the ruined hangar bay, the deck tilting dangerously beneath her. Emergency lights pulsed red, casting long shadows across the scattered debris and bodies of fallen crew. She grabbed a pulse rifle from a fallen Marine, checking the charge. Half power. It would have to do. A metallic screech echoed through the corridor ahead, the sound of a pod breaching the inner hull. Mia pressed against the bulkhead as the first Marauder warriors emerged, their armored suits bristling with weapons. Their glowing visors scanned the area, stopping where she hid. No time for stealth. Mia opened fire, the rifle's blue bolts cutting down 2 Marauders before they could react. The others scattered, returning fire. A plasma round grazed her shoulder, burning through her flight suit. Gritting her teeth, she rolled behind a cargo crate and returned fire. Deep in the ship's core, Chief Tom worked feverishly at the Omega Core's control terminal. Warning lights flashed as the system protested his commands. "It's not working," his assistant yelled over the alarms. "The safeties won't disengage." Tom wiped sweat from his eyes. "Then we do it the hard way." He pulled open an access panel, revealing the core's primitive manual overload. A single red lever, protected by 3 biometric locks. He pressed his palm to the first scanner. "Captain, we need you down here now." Captain Ray fought his way through chaos. The bridge was lost, his crew making their last stand in the corridors. Every deck was a war zone. He ducked as an explosion rocked the hallway ahead, then charged through the smoke, pistol blazing. A Marauder warrior lunged from the darkness. Ray barely sidestepped, feeling the heat of the enemy's vibroblade as it scraped his ribs. He jammed his pistol under the warrior's chin and fired. The body collapsed, but more were coming. His comm crackled. "Captain." Mia's voice was strained. "They're funneling troops toward engineering." "I'm trying to," the transmission cut off in a burst of static. Ray changed course, heading for the nearest maintenance shaft. If he could get below the enemy's advance. A new voice boomed through the ship's PA system, deep, distorted, and dripping with malice. "Captain Ray. How noble of you to die with your ship." The warlord himself was aboard. Mia stumbled through a ruptured bulkhead, her rifle now useless. She'd lost count of how many marauders she'd taken down, but they kept coming. Her vision swam from blood loss, but she pushed forward. A squad of marauders marched past her hiding spot, dragging captured crew members. Mia's blood ran cold when she recognized the warlord at their center, a towering figure in obsidian armor, his helmet retracted to reveal a face crisscrossed with scars and cybernetics. "The core will be ours within the hour," the warlord was saying. "Kill the rest." Mia's hand drifted to the grenade on her belt. One good throw. A strong hand clamped over her mouth. She nearly lashed out before recognizing Chief Tom's soot-covered face. He shook his head sharply, then pointed to a ventilation grate. As silently as possible, they slipped away. The Omega Core's chamber was eerily quiet compared to the battle raging outside its reinforced doors. Ray arrived to find Tom and Mia waiting, along with a handful of surviving crew. "It's rigged to blow," Tom whispered, "but we need all 3 command officers to activate it." He nodded to the biometric scanners. Ray placed his hand on the second panel. The system chimed. Mia hesitated. "If we do this, there's no coming back." Outside, the pounding on the blast doors intensified. Ray met her eyes. "Some things are worth dying for." Mia pressed her palm to the final scanner. The Omega Core began to hum, a sound that shook the very bones of the ship. The Omega Core's hum deepened into a roar, vibrating through the Dauntless like the heartbeat of a waking beast. The deck plates trembled as energy crackled along the core's containment rings, casting jagged blue reflections across the desperate faces of the crew. 5 minutes to overload, the computer announced calmly, as if it weren't sentencing them all to death. Captain Ray turned to the survivors, 12 battered crew members, including Chief Tom and Lieutenant Mia. Outside the chamber, the warlord's boarding party pounded against the blast doors, their plasma torches already cutting glowing lines through the metal. "We need to delay them," Ray said, checking his sidearm's charge. "If they breach before detonation, they'll try to shut it down," Tom finished grimly. He tossed Mia a fresh rifle from the emergency locker. "We make our stand here." Mia caught the weapon, her fingers tightening around the grip. "Then let's make it count." The warlord stepped back as his warriors finally burned through the blast doors. With a thunderous groan, the massive slab of metal collapsed inward. His cybernetic eye zoomed in on the scene beyond, the Omega Core pulsing with unstable energy, the handful of humans forming a ragged defensive line. "Pathetic," he sneered, motioning his troops forward. "Kill them. Secure the core." The first marauders charged, and ran straight into a hail of gunfire. Mia's rifle barked, dropping 2 before they crossed the threshold. Ray picked off another with precise shots. But the enemy kept coming, their heavier armor shrugging off glancing hits. A grenade rolled into their midst. "Down!" Tom tackled Mia aside as the explosion tore through their position. Shrapnel pinged off the core's shielding. 2 more crew members fell, screaming. The marauders pressed their advantage, pushing the defenders back toward the core itself. Ray took a plasma bolt to the thigh and went down hard. Mia dragged him behind cover as Tom laid down suppressing fire. 2 minutes, the computer warned. The warlord strode through the smoke, untouched by the carnage. His gaze locked onto the Omega core, its light reflecting in his inhuman eyes. Such power, wasted on weaklings. He raised a clawed hand, and the core reacted. A pulse of energy lashed out, not at the humans, but at the warlord himself. He staggered back, his armor systems flickering. What? Tom's eyes widened. It recognizes him. The core, it's rejecting his tech. Mia didn't hesitate. She lunged, not for the warlord, but for the core's exposed control node. If it reacts to him, maybe it'll listen to us. Her hand slapped against the panel. And the universe shifted. The moment Mia's hand touched the Omega core's panel, reality itself seemed to fracture. A shockwave of blinding blue energy erupted from the core, throwing everyone, human and marauder alike, to the ground. The warlord's cybernetics sparked violently as the energy washed over him, his scream lost in the deafening hum of the awakening machine. Mia's vision whited out. Strange images flashed through her mind, star systems being born and dying, fleets of unknown ships clashing in wars older than humanity, and a voice, vast and ancient, whispering, "Choose." Then, as suddenly as it began, the vision ended. Mia gasped, finding herself back in the core chamber. But something was different. The Omega core no longer pulsed erratically, it glowed with steady, controlled power. And the warlord? The warlord was changing. His cybernetic enhancements crumbled to dust, revealing scarred flesh beneath. His armor locked up, leaving him frozen in place. For the first time, fear twisted his face. "What have you done?" he roared. "Not me," Mia whispered, looking at her hands. "It." On the bridge of the command carrier, the Marauder crew panicked as their systems failed. Weapons powered down. Engines died. Across the entire fleet, the same scene repeated, every piece of Void Marauder technology had been rendered useless. The Dauntless, however, thrummed with new energy. Emergency systems came back online. The hull breaches sealed themselves with a shimmer of blue light. Even Captain Ray's leg wound knit itself closed before his disbelieving eyes. "The core, it's healing the ship," Tom breathed. "Not just the ship," Mia said, helping Ray up. She pointed to the view screen. Outside, the battlefield had transformed. Squadron 42's remaining fighters found their weapons and shields restored to full capacity. The Void Marauder ships drifted helplessly, their systems inert. The tide had turned. The warlord struggled against his failing armor, his voice raw with fury. "This changes nothing. My fleet will." "Your fleet is finished," Ray interrupted, stepping forward. He picked up a fallen Marauder blade, testing its weight. "Just like you." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the warlord did something unexpected, he laughed. "Kill me, then. But you'll never understand what you've awakened today." His eyes burned with manic certainty. The Omega core was never just a weapon. It's a key. And now, you've turned it. Before anyone could react, the warlord jerked his head sharply, activating a hidden implant. His body convulsed once, then went still. Dead by his own hand. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. 3 hours later, the surviving Void Marauder ships surrendered. With their technology disabled and their warlord dead, they had no choice. As Squadron 42's reinforcements secured the prisoners and began rescue operations, Mia stood before the now dormant Omega core. It had returned to its quiet hum, but she could still feel its presence in her mind, a whisper of something vast and waiting. Ray joined her, his face unreadable. "That thing recognized you," he said quietly. "What did it show you?" Mia hesitated. "A warning. And an invitation." She met his gaze. This was just the beginning. Somewhere in the depths of space, something ancient stirred. A signal had been sent. A door had been opened. And humanity was now on the threshold of something far greater than war.